And now for our pièce de résistance, here is a pre-taped interview I did with 3 people who are organizing this upcoming Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. So this is the first Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress in the world. It's going to be in Vienna. I'm attending it. Some great people who we've interviewed are attending it, like Stephen Kaposh, the Holocaust survivor, who's a very outspoken critic of Israel and is always protesting Israel's actions. Also, the great historian Ilan Pappé is going to be speaking there. And Tony Greenstein, who wrote that book that is so great, which is, I don't get a commission, Zionism During the Holocaust, the Weaponization of Memory in the Service of State and Nation, which is all about how the Zionists collaborated with the Nazis. Ilan Pappé has written several amazing books, including The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, and his recent book, Lobbying for Israel on Both Sides of the Atlantic, is excellent. I don't remember if it's Lobbying for Israel or Lobbying for Zionism. Excellent. And so I'm going to play this interview. And by the way, we'll put a link to, I think we already have a link to the Congress, which people can still sign up to attend. I'll be speaking there. One of the organizers of this Congress is Haim Bresheeth Zabnner, who's someone that we've interviewed in the past on the show, and also who's part of this documentary we're working on about Jewish Holocaust survivors speaking out against the Israeli genocide of the people of Gaza. So the people who we're about to speak to are Dalia Sarig, who is co-founder of the initiative Not in Our Name, founded by Jews in Vienna, and a candidate on the Gaza list. Haim Bresheeth Zabnner was professor of media and cultural studies at University of East London, and then a professorial research associate at the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS. He's a filmmaker, photographer, film studies scholar, historian. His films include A State of Danger, a documentary on the first Palestinian Intifada. His books include An Army Like No Other, How the Israel Defense Forces Made a Nation. He is the son of 2 Holocaust survivors and was raised in Israel, and he is a member of Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against the Genocide and a founding member of Jewish Network for Palestine. On November 4th, Haim was arrested over a speech he gave at a pro-Palestine demonstration outside the residence of Israeli Ambassador Tzipi Hotovely in North London. And Ronnie Barkan is an Israeli activist, a conscientious objector, and co-founder of Boycott From Within, a group of conscientious Israelis who support the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, against Israel. He represented the Popular Struggle Coordination Committee at the European Parliament in Brussels, where he challenged EU institutional complicity in Israeli violations. So this interview starts off with me asking the participants how the idea came to them to host the first Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress.
Last October, we had a Palestine Congress in Vienna. And I was part of the organizers, and Hanin Zoabi, a former member of Knesset, was joining. And while the Congress was taking place, the representatives of the Jewish community in Vienna, they did a media campaign in the public transport saying that during the Congress, the Palestine Congress is taking place in Vienna, Jews don't feel safe. And I showed this to Hanin Zoabi, and she said, why do you agree to let them speak on behalf of you? You are Jewish and you obviously feel safe. You have to do something. So then the idea of doing a Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress emerged.
So I think that this has had different cycles, the whole idea of a Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress, but it never materialized. And finally, the people in Vienna, picked it up and went along with that, and I was lucky to join them and bring in my own input, of course. I think that standing up to Zionism, and especially from among those that the Zionist state claims to speak on their behalf, this is crucial. In analogy to white folks who stood up against apartheid. And there were also, many of them were active in the ANC and so on. So it is not about us Jews, those who are, it's not about Judaism per se, it's about standing up to the Zionist state that claims to speak on our behalf. And rather than that, we join forces with those who are oppressed, subjugated, and terrorized by Zionism in order to eventually stop and abolish Zionism.
There is also another aspect to it. What Ronnie said is true for us three and for many others behind the Congress. But many Jews are now in a quandary. Israel is speaking on their behalf and telling the world that this is what Jews want to do and support. There is nothing, more. There's no more of a lie than this. And even the Jews that are supporting know that what they are supporting is terrifying. So what is at stake is the very nature of Jewish life after this. Because if Zionism wins, humanity loses. And humanity failed the test of stopping a genocide 80 years after the last big genocide against Jews. So we can't allow these people to say this is the voice of Judaism because of two things. First of all, because then we separate ourselves from humanity, which is not something that anyone should do, least of all radical Jews. And secondly, what this will bring, what is already bringing, is anti-Semitism. Of course, anti-Semitism is now growing everywhere because people are saying this is what the Jewish state and the diaspora Jews are supporting, and they are right. So I don't think we can stand and watch while Israel is not only finishing off the Palestinians and international law and adding to the decline of the West, but actually also endangering the life of Jews everywhere.
Can each of you tell me a little bit about yourselves? I mean, I know, obviously, I've had you on the show before, Haim, but for people who are watching this and may not have seen the episodes that we've done with you, can each of you just tell me about where you're from and what your relationship with Zionism is?
Well, very briefly, I'm an Israeli Jew. I was born not in Palestine or Israel, whatever you want to call it, but I was born in a refugee camp in Europe after the Second World War. So that probably explains my state of mind when I come to look at Palestine and the Palestinian refugees in Gaza, which are now being butchered. For the last 55 years, I've been an anti-Zionist activist. So for me, this did not start on the 7th of October or in 1948 either. It started when I was a baby. And of course, it didn't even start in 1948. It started 1897. So yes, nothing is new and everything is new. This genocide is like no other genocide, and I don't need to explain. And therefore, we must stand up as Jews, as Israelis, as human beings, as socialists, as nice guys, whatever you want. We are not going to take this.
Can you just briefly explain what your parents survived?
Both my parents survived 5 years in the ghetto. In the last 6 months, or 8 months actually, they were in Auschwitz. They come from the same town. They arrived in Auschwitz together. They left it, each of them, on a Fußmarsch to another country. My mother to Bergen-Belsen in Europe, my father to Gusen in Austria. They somehow managed to survive Auschwitz. No country wanted to offer them a place. They found themselves, and me, in a country they didn't want to be in Israel, that was 2 weeks old. My father refused to serve, was put in jail. They had to live in a place that didn't allow the first language, Yiddish, to be published and not even to be produced in the theater. So they had a very difficult time for the first few years in Israel, more than few years.
And what about you, Ronnie, and you, Dalia?
So I was born and raised in Palestine, also known as Israel. I was never too much of a Zionist, just a little bit, just a little bit indoctrinated, because there is a very strong indoctrination mechanism where basically children are being raised to be soldiers from kindergarten, I would say even before kindergarten. And but I did manage to come out of it. I was never too much of a nationalist, never too much of a Zionist. And still, it was a process. The moment that it clicked, the moment that I realized that my allegiance is not to something that is nationalistic and ultra-nationalistic and even worse in the case of Zionism, the moment that I realized that my allegiance is to something that is universal, the rest was very easy. I stopped being an Israeli. I stopped being a soldier also. I was a conscientious objector. And from that moment, obviously, I was on the side of Palestinians, because the situation, unlike what is being told to us in the media, is far from being complicated. It is brutal. It is barbaric. It is monstrous at this point. None of it is complicated, however. So ever since I've been an activist, conscientious objector I mentioned, part of Anarchists Against the Wall, which went to demonstrate in the West Bank, co-founded a group of conscientious Israelis who support the Palestinian call for BDS. More recently have been active with Palestine Action in the UK. We went to smash up Elbit Systems headquarters there in Bristol, which I take pride in.
Congrats.
And even though I take pride in that, that didn't stop this genocide from happening. So exactly because I grew up there, because of the history of the family, the entire family, grandmother has been to Auschwitz, grandfather in Dachau, and so on. Exactly because of that legacy, it makes it even more important. We carry even more of a responsibility to stop whatever is happening, the monstrosity that is happening right now.
Yeah, my family history is different, because my family had to flee Austria in 1938, and they found refuge in Palestine. And most of the family didn't want to stay in Palestine. They went back in 1947. But my grandmother was married already, and she stayed in Palestine until 1955. So my mother was born in Haifa in 1948. In the midst of the Nakba, and my whole family was very Zionist, especially my grandmother and my mother and my uncle. And when I was 18 years old, I went to Palestine. Until it took me like 6 years to find out, to have a clicking moment. For me, it was I studied Arabic. And I was working for a peace center, Givat Haviva, from the leftist Zionists. And I met my teacher, my language teacher. He was Palestinian, and he explained me what happened to his family, that they had to leave their village, and they found refuge in a neighboring village, and they were never allowed to come back. And those are stories that I never heard. This narrative had never been told to me. And then, I don't know, maybe because I knew how it is to be, how it feels to be a minority in Austria, because I left Austria 1987, so during the 80s, there was still a lot of anti-Semitism to be felt in Austria, in Vienna. And a lot of people that took part in the Holocaust, they just continued to live there. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe because of this feeling or of this experience, it was easy for me to think about how he feels as a minority in his own land after all this happened to him. And I started a process and came out anti-Zionist. But I had to leave Palestine again in 2000, because I couldn't stay there anymore, because I had this narrative, I carried this narrative, the Palestinian narrative, with me. And I just saw that the society is so much racist, and even if I was sitting in a coffee shop, listening to people talk on the next table, the talking was always very mostly racist, and I always had the impulse to say something. So it made it impossible for me to stay, and I left in 2000.
So tell us what this Congress is going to consist of. Who will be speaking, the themes, also the Palestinian voices that will be there?
It was very important for us to make it an open Congress. I mean, we will not talk about our Jewishness or what the identity issues that are not important to us. It's a Jewish Congress in the sense that all of us are Jewish, in the sense that the state of Israel is talking on our behalf, and we reject this. So we invited scholars, activists, Jewish, but and Palestinian, and also politicians. Let's start with Francesca Albanese, who will do a keynote speech on over Zoom. We have Arima Hassan, politician and Palestinian from France. We have Ilan Pape, a long-time anti-Zionist scholar and activist as well. Rada Karmi, who will join us, herself a Nakba survivor and a scholar dealing with anti-Zionism, of course, and being active. I mean, you are close friends, Haim and Rada, right? For many years, and Ilan as well. Yeah, and please add, who did I forget?
Well, there are many other people. Ronnie and I insisted when we joined the organizing committee is that we must include Palestinians. So this is Jewish in the sense that it is organized by Jews, but it is not a Jewish Congress in the sense that it's meant for Jews. It's meant for everyone. The people who are speaking come from a whole range of backgrounds. So there are half a dozen Palestinians of different experiences, human rights lawyers, academics, activists. For example, one of the speakers is Awad Abdel Fattah, who is the head of the One Democratic State campaign. A number of people from the Jewish community in different countries. Wieland Oban from Germany, Iris Hefetz from Germany, two amazing activists, fighting the German state and its positions on both the IHRA and anti-Semitism and its virulent attacks on Palestinians. The Holocaust survivor Stephen Kaposh, Peter Eisenstein, who is the one of the two leaders of the New Left Party in Norway. The third day of the Congress is devoted to activism and activists. And to that day, we have invited the left-wing forces who support Palestine, because as we know, there are left-wing, so-called left-wing parties who support Israel, like Der Linke and others in Austria especially. So we are bringing together a forum of developing a united front, at least, and in the first instance in Europe, and others from the United States, like people from IJAN. So people from all over the place. You can either talk about the continents they come from or the positions they represent. And so the third day is going to be very interesting because the academics, the lawyers, and the activists will sit together and work on the future, and that would be marvelous. Thanks to you, this will be streamed in real time, and we are very appreciative of your generosity on this issue.
Yeah, of course.
And we forgot another voice from the US. You might know her name is Tzipi Hotovely.
Oh, yeah. Right, in the flesh, yeah.